Hello lovelies, I'm the Fragnostic, and I welcome you back to Sanctuary Sunday here on this glorious weekend. What possible introduction could I give this legendary pillar of the NES library? The game that, like Keanu Reeves, defies aging. The franchise that, like Keanu Reeves, fills one specific role really fucking well and should never branch out from that role, like, ever again. My goodness, the Legacy of War and Contra Adventure don't make me hit you in the face. It is, of course, Contra, developed and published by Konami, originally for the arcade in 1987, making its way here onto the NES in 1988. Peerless, marvelous run and gun heaven at its finest. And here you'll learn the three basic rules of playing Contra straight out the gate in one single pickup. Rule 1, get the spread gun. Rule 2, keep the spread gun. Rule 3, shoot the spread gun. Class dismissed. It's really that simple. If you have the spread gun and you're not firing it, you're playing Contra wrong. The rest is just jumping, really. Look at those other little floating power-ups trying to get a look in there. Don't you fucking let them. If you've already got the spread gun, they are as much your enemies as any turret, soldier or alien overlord in this game. They're jealous of the spread gun. They seek to usurp your favor from its spread-alicious majesty. The laser cannon, the flamethrower, the machine gun. Pitiful horseshit shovels compared to the mighty spread gun. Intrigue them not. Now if this is somehow your first time clapping eyes on the glory of Contra, the action's split unevenly between two basic types of game screen. The side-scrolling madness of the previous stage and these third-person front-facing base assaults where you're dodging enemy fire, usually forgetting about the electric traps dead in front of you at least once per fucking playthrough. Not today though, pigs! And machine gunning the weeping Jesus out of the weak points on the walls and doors ahead to progress through to the boss. 3 lives in the top left of your screen, represented by the medals there, each good for precisely that's one hit of anything you care to name. You eat shit just as easily as you deal out in Contra, and if you don't like that, well, by goodness, you can cheat your spotty arse off because, and this is so well known now that it's really only going to be news to you if you're watching this 3,000 years in the future after the nuclear fires have abated, the hulking mutant overlords are dead, and the air is breathable again. You're excavating the remains of our once proud civilization for the blueprint you need to rebuild, repopulate, live. Damn it, live! Contra was the game that roundly popularized that most hallowed staple in gaming culture, the Konami code. That's up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, thank you kindly. Not the first game to do it, as is slightly more commonly believed than you'd expect. That would be 1986's NES release of Gradius, followed by that franchise's spin-off Salamander or Life Force, and then the mighty Contra, which in this instance gives you a whopping 30 lives with which to bludgeon your way through this utter ordeal. Even that's not enough for some, but then, you know, what is? Eat a dick, Deathtron! It's actually called the Ocular Fire. Sounds like some sort of South American STD. Onto the vertically scrolling waterfall stage now, and you know, the problem with commentating these classic games, I mean these really classic to end all classic type titles that everybody and their grandmother have played, is that I can't really tell you anything you don't already know about the game itself. You know? Who hasn't played Contra? Who doesn't know the Konami code? I think it's basically genetic memory at this point, isn't it? Like we're born, come out the womb knowing the tenets of Contra. If you played a run and gun side scroller, you already know everything there is to know about Contra. In fact, there's so little that's revelatory about this that I really wasn't going to play it at all for the channel. It's only because a request came in for a run of Contra Hardcores for the Genesis that I thought, well, fuck it, might as well start at the start, you know? I mean, you'll excuse me, I hope, if I skip a couple of them. This is really, I guess, an abridged assault on the franchise. After this, we'll go Super Contra, Contra 3, The Alien Wars, and then on to Hardcores. Don't think anybody wants to sit here and watch me play Game Boy games, so Operation C, as good as it is, can sit this one out, and Contra Force is and always has been a completely overrated piece of shit with horrendous slowdown issues. I'm probably not going past Hardcores either, because all the 5th and 6th generation entries Legacy of War, Contra Adventure, Shattered Soldier. It ranged from utter dog toilet to barely mediocre up until Contra 4 on the DS, which was excellent. But I'm spiraling away from my point here, which is what can I say about Contra? Shooters have moved on since then, far on, off in the distance and over the horizon, so why does this game still feel so fresh? What, 30 years down the line now? So many reasons, so many... Look here, that waterfall level was the only vertically scrolling stage of 8, and that's why you remember it. So you know what the first level looks like, you remember the snowfields and the alien base because, and this is key, Contra doesn't outstay its welcome and it never repeats the same trick twice except with the base levels, of which there are 2. Easy to remember, first base level and this, the harder base level. If I don't die, this will take me quarter of an hour to complete, just under. Gather that kind of basic design overview and put it together and you got a game that is memorable inside and out. It changes just enough as you progress to keep the challenge enthralling rather than slog heavy. And, if I might be so bold, a shooter that can confidently call itself the shooter version 1.0, if you will, casting all other betas and prototypes aside. Everything that came before it in the genre, even its own original arcade version, was leading up to this. Everything that came after just built on top of it, in much the same way that Doom wasn't the first FPS, but you dig down far enough in any modern first-person shooter and there it is, bang at the foundation line. Now, I could have shown you something less common here today. A lot less well played than Contra on the NES is indeed its arcade original, released the year before. I always try to play the superior version of every retro title I run for you here on the channel, and undeniably, Contra Arcade ran on far more powerful hardware than the NES, had greater graphical and audio capabilities, and yet still wound up being the lesser game. Now, that, lovelies, is a very rare thing to say about a home console port indeed, especially a technically inferior one, but it's not unprecedented, in my opinion anyway. Take Altered Beast. And we all know and love Altered Beast, all except me, I think, honest to God. Of all the so-called arcade classics, Altered fucking Beast is the most overrated, ludicrously cynical mess that was ever shut out into the seafront of this fine country. I hate it with every fibre of my being. I hate everything about the fucking car crash. It got one very well-known port, a major selling point for the Sega Genesis, being its original pack-in title when it was first released, a range of typical hack jobs for the home PC systems of the time, and it was one of the games with the dubious honour of receiving one of those goddamn Tiger Electronic handheld conversions that kindly yet unwitting grandparents curse their grandchildren's stockings with every Christmas. I had a couple myself. Now I know you like the Shinobi. Fucking sweet shit on unicorn tits, Grandma. You got me Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master... Sega Electronic Shinobi on Tiger handheld. Fuck you. I mean, thank you. Thank you, bitch. I mean, Grandma. Yay. How much are you worth dead again? But there was also one ridiculously obscure port of Altered Beast that came out only in Japan under its localized title, Jouki. Excuse the pronunciation there. And I don't want to go too deep into it because we're playing Contra, not Altered Beast, but Jesus Christ. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was much, much better. And a huge factor in that was that while the game was nowhere near as visually impressive as its arcade original, it pulled the player view of the action way, way back to accommodate it on the hardware. But suddenly you weren't dealing with a ton of oversized sprites swarming the shit out of you with snail-through treacle controls to depend on for a non-existent reaction time anymore. It was actually fucking playable, and while Contra Arcade is nowhere near, like shouldn't even be mentioned in the same fucking breath as Altered Beast in terms of quality, it does suffer from more or less the same basic flaws. For one thing, Konami made the baffling decision to release it on a vertical screen cabinet, which, you know, worked just fine for the waterfall stage and the 2 base levels, but playing the rest of it's like looking at the damn thing through a half-open door. You're forever edging forwards because the sprites are too goddamn big and you can't see what's 3 feet in front of your face. A lot of people think the arcade version actually runs slower than the NES port, but it doesn't at all. It just looks a hell of a lot slower because of how little of the play area you can actually see at any one time. I mean, besides that, the color palette is kind of washed out and unappealing, the music's muddy, the weapon sound effects are ear-splittingly jarring. It's not a bad game, but it had some severe aesthetic shortcomings that were ironed out to something more even and pleasing in this port. Especially the controls, mercy me, the responsiveness of Contra's NES controls still astounds me today. All the doziness of trying to maneuver your commandos around the arcade screen has been more than set straight here. Yes, commandos, because mother of God, this was also one of the most satisfying co-op experiences you could have on the NES at a time when a lot of two-player action felt either unbalanced and shoehorned in, or just did that bullshit where the second player took over when the first player died. Never understood that. Why have a mode specifically for that when you can just pass a damn controller over in single player mode anyway? Just so you can put stunning two-player action on the box? I've answered my own question there, haven't I? Yes indeed, they got names and this shit has got a plot and everything. Do you know the plot? Contra has a plot. Sort of. If you're player 1, you control Bill Reiser. Player 2 takes Lance Bean. Together you represent the elite Marine Commando unit Contra Force, and every brief plot summary I've ever seen online for Contra sets it in the year 2633. 2633! Fuck me dead. 2533, too close for you, was it? All this in 5,000 years' time? Ha! Nobody will buy that. But in the manual, the game's set directly in its year of release, 1987. 30 years after a mysterious object from outer space crashes just outside a bunch of Mayan ruins deep in the Amazon basin. I'm pretty sure the futuristic setting is from the Japanese version of the game. I know this American one gave Bill and Lance code names, Mad Dog and Scorpion respectively, and I think they might have fucked the player ordering up or something, because it looks like you're playing as Lance instead of Bill with his bandana and black hair. But then you fire up a co-op game and the second character is exactly the same as yours, except he's got red pants, so, you know. Where the fuck's Bill? Where Mad Dog at? Arrgh! Here boy! Drop it! Drop! Anyway, depending on what localization you're playing, you're saving the Earth. Yep, you're still here somehow. Saving the Earth from Red Falcon, a name that variously refers to either an alien overlord, a terrorist organization, an invading alien army, or shit, maybe all three. I don't know. I think the most commonly accepted answer in the West is that Red Falcon is both the alien tyrant leader and the name of the forces that he leads. Like, who names their army after themselves? Directly after themselves. The fuck is the matter with you? Whereas in Japan, I think it's just the name of the alien army and the actual leader is called something like Emperor Demon Evil Heart Ramos or... Jesus Christ, that's not even all of it. There's at least 2 other parts to that name that I can't recall off the top of my head. Into the aliens lair we go. Should have played the Famicom version of this for you really. There's a few nice extra graphical effects spread about the place. Red Falcon or Emperor Ramos Whiffleton Doom Humplebert III or whatever he's going by is a pitiful joke that eats a face full of shit from the spread gun, like everything else in this game. And now you just got a relatively pain-free trek to the finish line where there's a big bastard alien heart to blow to pieces before the sweet helicopter ride out of here. Unless you're playing the port that came out on the MSX2. Then you're not even halfway through the fucking game. Damn thing had like 18 stages, finished up with you fighting some sort of bullet-spewing Martian rectum underneath a volcano. Did have a nice feature that let you collect all the weapons and switch them on the fly, but again, fuck anything that isn't the spread gun. Buy a Red Falcon, see you again in Super Contra, or Probotector 2 Return of the Evil Forces if you're playing the censored European localization where everyone's a robot for some godforsaken reason. Arnie would be proud, you have indeed gotten to the chopper, and in Probotector they swapped this out for a jet. Couldn't even begin to tell you why. Were helicopters offensive to somebody in the late 80s? Were they considered religious imagery, some sort of niche religious cult? Congratulations! You've destroyed the vile Red Falcon and saved the universe. Consider yourself a hero. And you know what, Konami, you go ahead and do the same for giving us old school gamers a congratulatory credits message that is both spelled correctly and grammatically sound. Well bloody done. Well, I'm not jumping straight into Super Contra next week. This is Sanctuary Sunday after all, not Sanctuary Samey Day, the 8th secret day of the week that sucks utter balls, so instead, I'm doing it the week after. Yep, I'm running a week behind on some of the channel programming as I rehabilitate my eyeball after its recent trauma. We're supposed to be running Sonic the Hedgehog alongside this one, but we'll have that next week instead. Now, let me ask you a quick question, lovelies. I've got a range of options open to me for a second non-horror slot here on Sanctuary Sundays, so what would you like to see occupy it? I could just run a second retro game, I could get stuck into some RPG long plays like The Witcher or Yakuza. I could do a kind of mass pastiche of mini plays for all the weird indie titles I keep finding in my library. I want to hear some ideas. I was considering moving Tomb Raider Tuesday here actually, but Tomb Raider Sunday, that doesn't sound right, does it? Sounds unnatural. So yeah, get those suggestions in and we'll make some sort of decision in a couple of weeks. Namaste!